The last supplementary on this question is taken by the Honorable L.L. van der Merwe.
Thank you very much, Speaker, and thank you to the President. Mr. President, it is now almost a year since you tabled your emergency plan to Parliament and promised more support for shelters, a GBV council, no bail for those accused of gender-based violence, and clearing the backlog of gender-based violence cases at forensic labs. None of these undertakings have materialized to date. You just spoke now of the employment of 200 social workers, but let me remind you of what you said on 22 June 2020, and I quote, "I want all social workers who are unemployed right now to be brought into employment," end quote. While a war is being waged against women and children in their homes and on our streets, 5,372 social workers who have been trained by the state are sitting at home, Mr. President. Can you give us a commitment with clear timeframes by when these social workers will be employed by the state? And also, Mr. President, can you give us an indication whether you've responded to the open letter written to you by the National Shelter Movement of South Africa, raising critical issues about the underfunding of shelters? And as we sit here, Mr. President, your government has not paid shelters in the Eastern Cape their stipends. And it goes without saying that we'll never win the war against gender-based violence if we don't get the basics right, such as employing social workers and funding shelters. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, ma'am. The Honourable the President.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. The issue of bail, we've raised it, and it's a matter that has to be legislated for. And as I said in my initial input, the legislative instruments are now coming into the parliamentary system, and those will have to be dealt with by members of this House. The executive has processed these matters, and it had started off with the women of our country raising the issue of bail, which we supported, and I stood on a number of platforms supporting this issue of bail. And that has taken a bit of time, I must admit, much too long than I would have wanted, to bring the matter before the executive, as our Justice Department was looking at all the various legal laws that we have. It is now into the parliamentary system, and it is now up to this House to deal with the matter, and I hope that the House will deal with the matter as effectively as possible to achieve the ends and the objectives that you set out. With regard to clearing of backlogs, I did speak about this. We will admit that there are backlogs, and they are in the process of being dealt with. And the good thing is that now with a council in place, we will be able to have an institution that will ensure that the backlogs are dealt with, and they will be more focused, much more focused, to ensure that gender-based violence backlog cases are dealt with. The issue of shelters. We are building more shelters, and I actually want many more shelters than what is set out even in the program of government that we have, because these shelters, and I've visited a few, are centers of refuge for women who are violated, for women who are abused, and they are made to be the homes of those who need that type of refuge. And I'd like to see more and more of these shelters for as long as we continue having the scourge of gender-based violence. And so therefore we want to see those being speeded up. And I'm sorry to hear about the issue of the stipends. I will look into it in the Eastern Cape. If there are shelters where people have not been paid their stipends, we will need to get all the information and have that resolved. The issue of the employment of social workers is top of mind to me. There are many social workers in our country who were trained by government, and we actually saw the need for more and more social workers to be brought into the system of full employment by government during this COVID period. There are many cases that need proper attention by well-qualified professionals like social workers in our communities, and we want those social workers to be employed. And I have actually directed that we need to employ, because right throughout the system at local government level, that process is underway. And I'm sure that we will be talking about more social workers having been brought into the system in a few months to come. Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker.